you never know who you could have impacted with that next post that was never published. Let that sink in. That's what you're doing right now by thinking about quitting, and losing sight of the bigger picture of what you're able to create and who you're able to make an impact on. What's going on? You're listening to episode 64 of the Perspective Podcast, and I'm your host, Scotty.D.Russell of Perspective Collective. This show is about carving out time to build something for yourself and about being open to seeing things from a different perspective. I want to share what is and isn't working for me, along with sharing my guest point of view. And right away, I want to plug off the back some of these announcements that are coming up that I'm really excited about that I think are worthy to share. I'll be speaking Friday, February 23rd at AIGA Rally Thrive Conference. That'll be a pretty cool one. I'll be teaching a workshop on public speaking at Crop Conference, which you could buy tickets at cropbr.com right now. And lastly, April 12th through 14th, I'll be teaching a massive two-parter workshop I've been telling you about on crafting and delivering a killer talk at Creative South. That one's going to be a heater. You could register for that one at creativesouth.com. Also, before I get into today's topic of the show, I feel it's important to note that I've recently just started a Facebook group called The Perspective-Collective. And it's been hard for me to answer every email and message that people like you have been sending me. It's really hard to respond, especially when I find myself creating the same response to multiple questions and emails. So that's why I want to funnel everything into this group, as it'll allow me to address a group and hopefully help more than one person at a time. That's the whole point. And it's also a community I want to build for people like you to share your work, get critiques, and get encouragement and give encouragement. So if you're looking for community and you want direct access to me and other creatives, then search The Perspective-Collective on Facebook and join the team. Us together, that's what's going to make the collective. And I'm so stoked to build this out throughout 2018. So today's episode is something I've never done before, but I think it's extremely valuable, and I think maybe it's going to hit home with you if you've dealt with this or currently dealing, with this situation. Sometimes we get down on ourselves, and it's easy to lose sight of why we started creating in the first place. And today's episode is in response to an Instagram friend of mine named Gosha Bondarev. And I'm sorry, Gosha, if I kind of butchered your name. I'm doing my best here, but Gosha's from St. Petersburg, Russia. And to wrap some context around this, Gosha is a young illustrator and letterer who aspires to be a full-time freelancer. I've watched him amass a following, over 20,000 followers in, the last 1 to 2 years I've been following him. And while someone may have a large following count, this doesn't always translate into confidence and happiness, and I can totally relate to this. So in following, here's a message that Gosha sent to me via Instagram, and then following that is my response. And I just want to note, I provided the actual raw audio response in the show notes over at perspective-collective.com/64. And what I turned this episode is what I spoke in that podcast episode, but then I kind of just fleshed out my thoughts a little bit more thoroughly and packaged it up because I think it's a way that you're going to find more value from it. And while I can't respond with audio to each person who sends me an email or message, I felt called to respond to this one as it felt like my old self talking through him. And with Gosha's permission, I hope this wave of vulnerability and encouragement hits you when you need it most. Again, you can find the show notes to this one over at perspective-collective.com/64. If you find that this one hits home with you, please just give it a share on social media. And if you find inspiration from the show, channel that into some type of drawing or creation or whatever it is and tag me over at Perspective Podcast. I will happily share it there on my Instagram page at Perspective Podcast and give you proper credit. So let's get into the show. And this is from my brother Gosha. Hey man, sorry if I'm bothering you, but I need advice. I re-listened to episode 25 about You Are Not Invisible again because I wasn't able to do anything creative for the last month. After that, I felt like I should ask you. The ugly truth is that I gave up. I started learning programming because it seems that I need some valuable skills to pay the bills. I have some pictures to post on Instagram from the last year, but I'll run out of them soon and not sure what to do next. I'm realizing that maybe 4 years of hustling is enough to understand this area isn't for me. I don't fit in here because I see what others are doing and how much more creative and interesting their stuff is. I feel I'm only progressing and using Instagram a little better, but my drawing skills are on the same level as years go by. I'd realize it as soon as possible and try to apply myself in a different area. I asked a couple of friends from the creative industry, and they tell me if I'm not sure I want to do it, then it's probably not for me. I know that I should decide it by myself, but I was hoping you'd have something to say. And when I read that from Gosha, man, it really hit me. It hurt to know that like people out there feel that way, and that's how I used to feel. And so this is the response I crafted to share with you guys, and kind of goes more in depth and more thorough than the raw response, which I said I have in the show notes for this. So my response is, Gosha, I'm glad you're able to be vulnerable and trust me not to judge you. What's funny is that I deal with this inner voice of doubt every day as I push the limits of my creative dream. I feel sometimes we get to a point where we suffocate our dreams because we expect so much from ourselves. It causes us not to only lose sight of what we love doing in the first place, but maybe miss the signs the universe is trying to guide us towards. When I started Perspective-Collective almost 4 years ago, I had my heart set on becoming a full-time freelancer. I wanted financial freedom, time freedom, and most importantly, I wanted those bragging rights of working with the best, biggest names of the industry. I saw people older and younger than me living out this dream. And while I held down a day job, it was hard to see past the $50 logo commissions people were only willing to pay me. People didn't see the value or the skill set that I was trying to build. And while I was holding down this day job, I didn't feel as creditable. Slowly, this killed my freelance dreams of, having these big clients and doing it full time. However, I'm lucky that somehow I caught a sign from the universe and I began blogging. I've mentioned before, but this radically changed things in my career, even though my blog never blew up. Like, it never blew up. I never got tons and millions of readers or anything like that, even thousands. And while I've made progress, this new path of blogging and teaching and speaking, it created new challenges and provided new waves of negative thoughts within me. And I became even more envious, not only of people who had big time clients, but people that I look up to a lot, like Andy J. Miller of the Creative Pep Talk podcast. And, his podcast is incredible. It's for creatives. I think my podcast is good. I'm still finding my voice, but his is on another level. And I'm jealous because he seemed to have found his voice and his unique artistic ability when I'm still steady mining and refining and trying to shine. And not to mention this, but he has a client list that speaks for itself. But deep down, I know that it's dumb to be jealous of Andy because he's dealt with these same struggles that I'm dealing with, that Gosh is dealing with, and that you're dealing with while we try to find our way. I realize these moments of doubt and comparison are normal. Everybody deals with it, whether they admit it or not, yet dwelling in them suffocates the passion, making me forget why I do this in the first place. So why do I do this in the first place? I do this Perspective Collective because I fucking love to create, and I'm so passionate about pushing people like you to find their best creative selves. And this is the football coach that lingers in me after, football and all that stuff has passed on and is a thing in the past. So this is where I want to ask you, Gosha, and you, the listener, why did you pursue art in the first place? Did you put pencil to paper in the beginning solely to land a client? I highly doubt it. And if you're like me, it was probably a crayon in the beginning just because you're a little kid and you stab yourself. But Gosha, I want you to know that you are incredibly talented, young, and full of potential. It seems from my perspective that you're putting so much pressure on yourself to have each post land you a client that you're killing the fun. Who knows? Maybe you do need a small break from art just to refresh and refocus. That's totally okay. It's totally normal. And that's why some, professors and things have sabbaticals just to take a quick break. and maybe take a month off to pursue other interests. Maybe you want to cook or knit or go take an adventure and travel. I don't know. Just maybe you need a break. But whatever you do, I feel very strongly that you're going to regret it when you're on your deathbed if you quit this. You have too much talent to throw in the towel. And honestly, as a friend and as a creative in the community, I'd be extremely disappointed in you for wasting your gift. I wouldn't be mad at you, but just like it hurts more when your parents say you're disappointed, I'd be disappointed in you. You never know who you could have impacted with that next post that was never published. Let that sink in. That's what you're doing right now by thinking about quitting, and losing sight of the bigger picture of what you're able to create and who you're able to make an impact on. And if you're like me, you enjoyed Instagram in the beginning because you loved creating and you posted because it meant something to you. And that's for me back in like 2014, 2013, I posted not for the likes and the attention because I didn't have an audience then. I posted because I loved it and it meant something to me. And you created and shared because you found joy in it. Somehow things shifted. We now post because we need the engagement, affirmation, or job inquiries to feel worthwhile and to have this purpose as an artist. Maybe you do need a day job like programming that can pay the bills. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I rock a day job, and while it makes me discredit myself sometimes, I know it's fueling the means to pursue Perspective Collective without that added financial stress of wondering where that money's going to come through. So it's okay to have that day job. And I should note, don't just get a job in a field because it'll net you the most money. Usually that comes at a cost of killing the passion and adding more pressure to yourself. For me, if I didn't have other ways to make money, I would be out there delivering pizzas if it meant that I could still come home and find time to enjoy what I was creating. And when you do find your groove again, because Gosha, I know you're gonna, and you want to attract clients, here's a few things that I would recommend doing differently. First off, have a legit website that is a hub for all Gosha and why they should hire you. Like you do really well on your Instagram, show off your personality and show the work you want to attract. Right now, Behance and Instagram are your tools, but you need a home base that doesn't rely on social platforms as you are playing by their rules and they could be gone tomorrow and then you don't exist, homie. Next, maybe do some type of outreach. It may be uncomfortable, but hit people up locally that could use your services and offer them out pro bono at first. I've mentioned it before. I did my first 3 murals for free before I attracted paid gigs. It sucked, but it was worth it in the long run. And something I found a lot of value in is make sure to document the process from beginning to end and not only share it on your social platforms, but take it one step further and create case studies on your site. This will allow future clients to see your process and how you get to an end result. Finally, always remember that the inner critic is going to attempt to convince you that you don't have what it takes. On top of that, other people are going to possibly agree with that inner critic and tell you maybe this isn't for you. And with everything in me, I say, fuck them. I have to admit, there's plenty of times I have to talk myself off the edge from quitting. And other people maybe in the past telling me that maybe this wasn't for me, or maybe I'm trying too hard, or maybe there's something else I'm better at. It's all a part of taking the shit in stride, which makes you appreciate the sunny days when things actually go right and you feel good about your purpose and you have confidence in your ability. You certainly have what it takes, and you've barely scratched the surface of what you'll accomplish down the road. Maybe full-time freelance isn't in the cards for you, like it's probably not for me in the cards anytime soon. And that's totally okay. Don't let the inner critic block you from seeing the signs the universe could be sending you. Whatever you do, don't forget why you began creating in the first place, as that's what matters most. Like I said, I know this one is a bit of a switch up, but it hurt reading his initial message and then, writing out this response and even like speaking it out to you guys right now kind of makes me emotional, just because I remember what it was like to be, in that situation, and it's something I still deal with. And that's why I pour everything I have into this podcast because it means so much to me, and it means a lot to me to help someone like you get out of that shitty stretch or that, that dark moment that you're in where maybe you're willing to quit and let that inner critic or let outside sources convince you that you're not capable or that you don't fit in or belong, because you fucking do. You really do. It's just got to be a matter of how badly do you want it. And like Jason Craig says, passion is something you're willing to suffer for. And if you're truly passionate about something, you're going to suffer. And just make sure it's something you're willing to suffer for. Like this art game, I'm willing to suffer. I'm willing to suffer nights of not sleeping, nights of, being stressed the fuck out because I got to get episode artwork done. I'm willing to stress myself out over this because I feel like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and I hope people like you get something out of it at the same time. All right. So Gosha, I hope you're listening, brother. That one's for you. And let's just roll right into this week's dose of inspiration. You already know this section's going to Gosha, and you can find him at Instagram at Goshawaf. That's GOSHAWAF. My homie Gosha has an incredibly unique style of meshing illustrations and lettering together, accompanied by some type of story or message in the caption. He's also extremely skilled at delivering these awesome compositions, which is why I'm sure he probably attracted a solid audience is what he has today. And he's definitely an account you should be checking out. And Gosha, if you've amassed 20,000 people, you're doing something right, man. So keep it going. That's social proof enough. If you're enjoying what you hear and you want to support the growth of the show, I have a few ways you can make that happen. The first is by becoming a backer at patreon.com/perspectivepodcast. With your donation per episode as little as $1, $3, or $5, it makes a huge difference. Even the price of your weekly coffee. It allows me to pour into the show, cover expenses, pay for Áine to help me edit these shows to get ahead. And I try to hook you up with some rewards back. So it's a win-win. And to support the show, you can become a backer over at patreon.com/perspectivepodcast. The second way to support the show is for you crypto heads out there. In the show notes for each episode, I'll have addresses for Bitcoin, Ethereum, or Litecoin donations if you prefer to go that route. And finally, you can leave a ratings and review over iTunes. Please leave the review part. It not only helps the show get discovered, but it gives me an opportunity to give you a nice little thank you plug like this week's rating and review. And this one comes from Shane at Rustic Overtones Design. Shane says, I find Scotty's format to be easy listening and it flows well. It's great to hear from folks I follow while also being exposed to other talents in a fun, non-forced environment. Looking forward to more. Thank you so much, Shane. If you've been listening to the show for a while, Shane is someone I've plugged in my newsletter of the Dose of Inspiration before I started doing it on the show. You can find him over at Rustic Overtones. He does these amazing wood carved pieces. So a lot of lettering and stuff too. It's super interesting. So thank you, Shane, for taking the time to do that. Love you, brother. And as I wrap things up, I got to give a huge thanks to Áine Brennan all the way from Ireland for making this episode sound so good, and a huge thanks to Nick Jenkins for all the dope theme music you hear on the show. You can check him out at SoundCloud or on Instagram, and his name is Blookah. That's BLOOKAH. And as you finish out your week strong, I want to encourage you to keep showing up, keep putting in the work, keep creating, because you're worth it and you fucking fit into this creative community and you have what it takes. You got this.